Hello everyone, and welcome to our new lesson with Booknet Academy. Today we're going to talk about the most complicated and yet the most interesting of our platform's features, Story About. You will see that it's not just a short list of tags, as Booknet authors often call them, but also a great way of hooking a reader. Story About is an important tool that helps readers to find your book among thousands of others, even if they are within the same genre. It may seem that Story About is an insignificant feature in our desktop version. Only Booknet seasoned readers know that they can use it to access specific book feeds. In most cases, users read book descriptions, which we discussed in our previous lesson here at Booknet Academy. When a Story About key is very popular, like, for example, love, romance, or billionaires, readers may end up on your story's Booknet page by merely Googling books about billionaires. Story About attracts people who just search the internet for books on those specific themes they are eager to read. You can add things like zombie or dystopia to your list of Story About keys, which will attach your book to a feed of similar stories on Booknet. Our SEO specialists are constantly busy making sure that these specific book feeds appear every time someone comes up with a Google search result that fits a given book theme. What is more, Story About becomes the only available description of a book to those readers who use Booknet's mobile version or the Android app. When you look at your smartphone, you probably can't read an author's name clearly or trace specific images on a book's cover because smartphone screens are often rather small. This is when those short Story About combinations become the easiest to detect. For example, in White Waters, Story About includes romance, betrayal, and heartbreak. If readers are fans of romance, they are probably familiar with words like betrayal and heartbreak. It means that, based on those Story About combinations, the book's target audience will have no trouble understanding what the story is about and will decide whether the book is a good fit. There is yet another important thing that has to do with Story About. Each Story About key has not only its own feed, but also its own ranking. If you go to your book's page using the mobile version or Android app and select the feed correctly, then your book will end up on the first, the second, or the third place in that key ranking. Let's say Story About keys you created for your book include new adult and college, and this combination brings your book to the first place in that specific tag's ranking. You and everyone else will see a nice and clear indication of your story's ranking on its page. In most of such cases, readers don't even know that the primary genre of your book is romance. So, if you attach the right Story About to your book, you have a good chance of attracting more readers from the web. As we mentioned before, your book's annotation doesn't appear right away when readers access it from the web. Even when you tap on the book icon, you see only a short version of the book's description. Don't forget about this because it's very important. It's also crucial to understand that if your Story About doesn't fit the primary genre of your book, you risk losing the reader's interest. Here, for example, we see that the genre of the book is romance, but the author has selected somewhat misleading Story About Philippine mythology, Filipino identity, and alternate world. As a result, by publishing the book with such Story About keys in the genre of romance, the author unwillingly kills the book's chance at ranking high in the feed. In other words, if this book appears in the keys ranking, but its genre doesn't fit, readers will choose other books that do correspond to the genre that they searched for. Sooner or later, it will negatively influence the overall ranking of that book whose tags don't fit the genre. Let's do a small recap of Booknet's Story About and its features. When it comes to browsing book descriptions and choosing stories to read, a vast majority of readers rely on Story About. These keys consist of and may include 3 words or combinations of words. Instead of bringing people to the main page, very often Google redirects potential readers straight to Booknet's feeds that are based on Story About. This way, if an author comes up with the right tags, for example, love, heartbreak, or billionaires, it may help him or her to attract new readers. It is also essential to remember that readers who have been reading on Booknet for a long time are pickier and often navigate using only story about. In other words, when they search for books about, say, billionaires, they do it by clicking on the appropriate story about key. It allows them to access a whole feed of books about billionaires and select the ones that catch their attention. This is why you have to consider your story about carefully and wisely, because they are as important, if not more important, than your book description. Thanks for watching.